3, 2, 1.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nittany No Huddle Podcast.
From Philadelphia to Los Angeles
And everywhere in between.
filmed at the Nittany No Huddle studio.
It's Jordo, Zach, and Coach Devin covering all things Penn State football all the time.
This is from 45 and it's blocked. Lions scoop it up. Brad Haley will score.
And here we go.
All right, welcome back, Nittany No Huddle Nation. I got Coach Devin and Zach here. Today we're covering Illinois versus Penn State out in Champaign, Illinois. Honestly, I'm hoping we just blow them out, and I'm so sick of hearing about the 9 overtime game. It's like my second biggest pet peeve right now, next to Brett Bielema's, I'm just going to say it, kind of bitch-made comment towards Penn State. I don't know if either of you guys have a take on that, but that's my hot take to start off the show. Like, comes out and basically says Penn State's afforded more opportunity than Illinois to recruit players, basically hinting at the NLI deals that we've made, which compared to a lot of other powerhouse schools, I think we're still behind on personally. So I don't know. It seemed like a real out-of-pocket comment. What do you guys think?
I guess I'll jump in. I mean, I don't know. It doesn't get me too excited. I've read some takes that it was actually him kind of hinting at his own administration, like, hey, we're not on a level playing field with some of these other programs. Whether it was intended to be a shot at Penn State or not, I don't know. I do agree with you. I think it was probably unnecessary, and I would have said it a different way, perhaps, if you wanted to just try to get the message across that there's a resource battle going on here, and we're not keeping up. But it doesn't bother me as much as I think it bothered you.
I don't know. I got triggered. I'm gonna be honest. It just seemed like why everybody has to like add fuel to the fire versus Penn State. I mean, we saw it with West Virginia, their coach basically taking a shot after the game because we scored on them. Like, just stop us. I don't know. Every point matters in college football. So, if somebody is going to run the score up on us, so be it. That just means we're not good enough to stop them. But I got that off my chest. So we'll move in to other Penn State news. One of the big headlines that came out the last 2 days is 4-star offensive lineman Jalene Matthews decommitted. Put out this big Instagram post basically thanking Franklin and the team, and he feels bad about decommitting, but so be it. That's kind of the recruiting train lately, and with people jumping in transfer portals, that kind of stuff really doesn't bother me much. I don't know if you guys have any opinions on the matter.
Yeah, I think it's just part of recruiting. I mean, I feel like as a whole, Penn State has not done a great job recruiting offensive linemen until maybe the last 2 years, apparently, since our offensive line is really solid right now and some really good young guys. So of any position to leave, I feel like that's the one I'm least surprised to hear that there's a 4-star recruit deciding to go somewhere else. He's probably going to go to Ohio State or Wisconsin just because that seems like everywhere good offensive linemen go. It is what it is. You're tired of hearing about 9 overtime. I'm so tired of people posting on Twitter and Instagram like not committed, still looking at offers and all. I get tired of that. Like, just play the game.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you there. Is keeping up with recruiting is something I don't have the time to do, and I'm sure neither do you guys.
Yeah, I feel like Zach's the best at that, and even him. I used to be. Yeah,
I used to be better at it.
Family, yeah.
The only thing I would say is I know Franklin. You don't see this a lot with them. You see this, I think, a lot across the country. Guys just committing and decommitting, and you don't see it a lot with Penn State. And I know they really stress like, don't commit unless you're sure. Like once we commit to you and we make an offer, like it's an offer, and we don't give them out to everybody. And don't, if you're not sure, don't commit. And so who knows what's going on behind the scenes, if there's more to read into it, or if there's just another school that offered him that maybe he wasn't expecting, or you just don't know. I think it's the type of thing that in a vacuum doesn't bother me too much. It's if you see like a spate of decommitments all like in the same time frame, that's when maybe you think, okay, is there something going on behind the scenes, some kind of coaching issue, but we'll see.
Yeah, that's pretty much how I feel about it. It is what it is when it comes to recruiting, and Franklin has said they recruit specific players that will fit the program, fit the ethics and values that he's tried to instill. So, yeah, I mean, it sucks losing a 4-star commitment, but I'm sure we'll find another one. Kind of where I'm at with it. So enough about that. We'll move on to Penn State at Illinois this weekend. Like you guys said, the 9 overtime game has just been on my news feed nonstop, and it just and maybe if we would have won, I would feel different about it, but I'm just so sick of seeing it. Like, that was just horrible all around.
It really was.
That was one of those where I wish they would have take the pit approach and buried the tape out back of Beaver Stadium somewhere. But a lot of lessons to learn on how not to run goal line offense there. So,
yeah, I mean, that was a long time ago. It feels like.
Yeah, I mean, we were still taking everything out of the shotgun back then. So,
yeah.
But, Devin, you have any historic facts for us for Penn State, Illinois?
Yeah, I can. If you give me 1 second here. Lost my tab. So Penn State leads the all-time series 20-6. Illinois won that last matchup in 2021. They didn't play last year. Penn State is 9-4 all-time in Champaign, including their most recent win was 2018, a 63-24 beatdown that I think could be similar this week. And then Brett Bielema all-time against Penn State is 3-3. Just 1-0 with that win in 2021. But from moving over to Illinois, he was 2-3 at the time. So that's just some background. We like to know the all-time records and stuff.
Yeah, good stuff there. We'll move on. Illinois has not looked very impressive first 2 games. I just was rewatching the Kansas game last night, actually, and I'm kind of with Zach. I know you said earlier today you're on the Kansas hype train a little bit, but man, did Illinois not look good. And I think I'll go through some of the stats here, but I think it starts with their offense. I mean, total passing through 2 games, only 408 yards in the air, 307 rushing. And their leading rusher is their quarterback, Luke Altmaier, who is transferred from Ole Miss, right?
Yeah, correct.
Yep. Yeah. So Ole Miss, I know he didn't play much. I think he played 2, maybe 3 games, or started maybe 2-3 games. But he has 22 carries for 139 yards. And I know when we saw West Virginia play, they ran a lot of quarterback plays out of the backfield. But Almeyer's pretty good at the RPO, so it'll be interesting to see if that's how they game plan and try to utilize that against us. Their best receiver, Isaiah Williams, 11 catches for 150 yards in 2 games. So averaging 75 yards a game, not terrible, not great. But, I mean, I think it's safe to say Kansas doesn't have the same defense that we have. So I'm hoping we kind of shut that down and then really force them to run. Another interesting stat I saw is they're 36.8% on third down conversion, which that's a good way to lose a lot of games, in my opinion. Those are the kind of stats you see on teams that only win, 4 or 5 games a year. I'm not saying Illinois will do that, and there's always room for improvement. And they've played some decent teams, Kansas being one of them. And Zach, remind me who the other team they played was.
They lost, or they beat Toledo in week 1, 30-28 in a squeaker. Very close.
On a last second field goal, didn't they? Wasn't?
Yep. And Altmaier, we'll get into it maybe more, but Altmaier bailed them out with a 4th down throw that just they were fortunate to even be in a position to kick a field goal at the end of the game.
Yeah, I mean, we can talk more about Altmaier now. As good a time as any. He looks pretty good, to be honest. I just don't think he's getting a lot of help. He has been sacked 8 times, and he got sacked 6 times last week. So obviously their offensive line is not where it should be. But hopefully, this is a chance for us to get some more sacks. we're currently tied for the most sacks, I believe, in the NCAA with 7. So we haven't really got a lot of sacks, but a lot of pressures, I feel, is kind of what we've been hitting on. And with West Virginia, obviously their quarterback being more mobile, he's going to be a little more difficult to sack. So, and I don't know, Zach, maybe you can tell me when they record sacks versus like quarterback runs, is that a different stat, or is that something that if the quarterback gets
I
sacked
think
behind the line of scrimmage, they
yeah, if the
make that
quarterback, I
determination?
think if the quarterback gets tackled behind the line of scrimmage, it counts as a sack and it counts towards rushing yards, regardless of whether he was actually rushing, attempting to rush the ball or not.
Gotcha.
Which is, as I say every week, I rail against that because then it makes it difficult to actually assess like the efficiency of the run game in either direction. Sometimes you have a team where an immobile quarterback gets sacked a million times and they actually ran the ball well, but his negative yards eat into it versus a team like kind of like Illinois right now, where actually Altmaier has a lot of rushing yards and it maybe glosses over the fact that as far as their traditional run game, it actually hasn't been what you might expect based on a Brett Bielema team and what they were able to do last year with Chase Brown, who's really, really good, just like your classic prototypical bell cow. And now he's off. I believe he might have won the backup job to Joe Mixon in Cincinnati. And I think one of the big takeaways for me, just talking about the team holistically, but especially in the defensive secondary, is they lost a lot of NFL talent, which is kind of rare to say for Illinois. And I think, maybe getting back to Bielema's comments about NIL and whatnot, it's hard to replace. I mean, they had 3 secondary guys get drafted, including Witherspoon, the cornerback, got drafted in I think 5th overall to Seattle. And then a safety, Sidney Brown, who's playing for the Eagles right now. So they don't have the cupboard is a little bit more bare. They don't have the ability to replace that type of talent when they lose it. And to get back on track to starting with Altmaier, if you're a Penn State fan that watched the 2018 game, I know we said we weren't going to talk about that, or the 20-18 game 2 years ago, and you haven't seen Illinois in either of their games this year, you're going to tune in Saturday and be like, who is this? Is Brett Bielema still coaching there? Because they are not running the 7 offensive linemen and 2 tight end packages that you saw in that game. As much as I think Bielema wants to be that style of team, I think I give him credit. I think he's a solid coach. I think he realizes where the strength and his weaknesses of his team is. And this year they just don't have that. They don't have the bell cow running back. I think they lost a lot of offensive linemen from last year. You're actually going to see them line up, spread the ball out a little bit. They have a couple of receivers that I think are pretty solid. One they really like in Isaiah Williams. And if you're of a certain vintage, you'll remember another Isaiah Williams from Illinois. They used to go by the name Juice. So I don't know if they just recruit guys. If your name is Isaiah Williams, you're going to Illinois, but they're going to drop
didn't know his name was Isaiah.
And the really interesting thing is, for years, Illinois, I mean, it's been a long time since Illinois had a quarterback that you could say, this guy's at least in the upper half of the Big Ten, maybe even higher. And the odd thing is, I think they have that this year. I really like Altmaier. If you watch the Kansas game, not a lot went well for Illinois at all. And he was one of the bright spots where I think he actually was making some plays, and he scrambled for 2 touchdowns. Again, if you're sort of like the West Virginia game, if the best part of your offense is the quarterback is able to kind of make something out of nothing, that's a good thing. But if that's all you have, that's not enough. But I think he's a kid you're gonna have to pay attention to. Penn State's pass rush has been, you referenced some of the stats, it's been good. I don't think it's been as good as I expected. But the bigger thing for me is some of the gap integrity and keeping quarterbacks in the pocket. We talked about Garrett Green, his ability to scramble, and I don't think Penn State did a good job, whether it's through spying on him or playing zone or just the defensive front rushing the passer in a way to try to get to him, but also not just sell out and leave giant gaps for him to bust through. That's something I'm going to be watching, because I think they're going to keep him in the pocket.
Yeah, I agree there. Altmaier, he is their offense right now. So we'll see how we come out and if we can QB contain or maybe force him to throw into coverage, and maybe we get some takeaways. Speaking of takeaways, Penn State has been phenomenal in not turning the ball over. We're one of, I think, 8 teams who haven't turned the ball over. Now, granted, we played West Virginia, who's kind of down, and then obviously played to nobody last week in Delaware. But if Aller can just keep not turning the ball over, it's a great key to success, in my opinion. We really haven't seen him have to throw the ball deep. I think we only have one pass over like air time or air yards over 25 yards, and it was that first touchdown to Lambert Smith. So we've been kind of just cutting up the inside interior of defenses, and I would look for that to continue. When I rewatched Illinois versus Kansas, they were very sloppy in the middle, committing a lot of penalties. They seem to be playing kind of with like a chip on their shoulder a little bit. They were getting very heated, a lot of extracurricular fouls going on. So that all plays into our hands. I feel like we've been a very disciplined team penalty wise. So, but I would expect them to come out and do a lot of the same against us as they did Kansas. So, anything else for the offensive side of the ball that you guys want to talk about?
Just a couple things that stood out to me here, looking at some Illinois stuff. One about Altmaier, I agree with both of what you said. I think the thing that stood out to me the most is when you look at, he only played 9 games at Ole Miss, and only threw for 300 yards, but he had like 20 rush yards he had 3 rush yards on 30 attempts. And now in 2 games, he's leading Illinois in rushing. So that just kind of stood out to me that he didn't or couldn't run at Ole Miss, which obviously is a different style and a Brett Bielema style now at Illinois. But just kind of stood out to me that he's clearly improved that in his transition over to Illinois. We didn't really mention running backs. Their running back is Reggie Love. He is his 3rd year as a starter, I believe. If not, I think 2021 he played a lot. I feel like did he score against Penn State in 2021? I feel like.
So we weren't going to talk about the game, but I have the box score up.
Okay.
And in one of the craziest stat lines you'll ever see, Chase Brown, who I mentioned was the bell cow last year, he had 33 carries for 223 yards, which that might be a record. Honestly, I need to look into for opposing running back carries and yards in Beaver Stadium. He was 33 for 223, and Josh McCray had 20. He was the second running back, had 24 carries for 142 yards.
Yeah, and McCray for the whole season only had 540. So he had 400 yards in the rest of the season.
He got a third of the way there in that
as
one
a true
game.
Freshman. Yeah. So let's move on from that. But their running back is Reggie Love. Him and McCray were both Doak Walker watch lists. I think they kind of give that out to anybody, it seems like, early in the year, but
everybody's on the watch list.
Yeah. And then Isaiah Williams, I think, is a really cool story because he's only 5'10", 180, but he was at Illinois as a quarterback and was their starting quarterback in 2020 during the COVID year. I think was one of the leading rushers because they only played 6 games. He passed for like 400 yards, rushed for like 400 yards. And then with one practice to go in spring ball in 2021, they said, nope, never mind. Let's go to wide receiver. And now he's had at least one catch in every single game that he's ever played at Illinois as a wide receiver. He was named to a bunch. Excuse me. He was named to a bunch of watch lists. I think that's kind of cool for him to be a quarterback, to be a starting quarterback, and then have one spring practice before ultimately being their number 1 target here 2 years later. It's kind of cool. Obviously he's their best receiver, but you would think that if they run any sort of trick plays, which Illinois might have to do against Penn State, I would look for him to throw. And then I guess offensive line, just one offensive lineman kind of stood out to me, and I got to find his name here. Isaiah Adams. Isaiah Adams is probably their best offensive lineman. It's kind of weird because he's their left guard, and I feel like guards are usually the guys that don't stand out as much on film. He's a JUCO transfer. This is his 2nd year at Illinois, but he's 6'5", 320, and transferred from a small community college in Kansas. And he's an Outland Trophy watch list. He's pretty solid. I mean, he was ranked as a number 5 guard last year, according to PFF. So he's somebody to keep an eye on if we try to attack the middle, which has kind of been a weakness for us. So I'm kind of concerned with that. But I think their center kind of sucks. So if I'm being completely honest, I don't think their center is any good. It's not like West Virginia where their center was their best player and they had two pretty good guards. Whereas Illinois, I think their best player is a guard, and then everyone else is just kind of mediocre. So, which would explain why they gave up so many sacks.
Yeah, definitely.
Fuck
I
offense.
think that's basically all I have for offense. And defensively, I know we hit on some of the stats. I didn't really see anybody who was like a standout player. Zach, you already said they lost, I think, three defensive players to the NFL draft. So
They had three guys all out of the secondary that all got drafted, and then there was a few other defensive players that signed, as undrafted players. So there's a massive exodus of talent, and I think you've seen even the Toledo game. They ultimately came back and won. And in fairness, Toledo is the class of the MAC, and I don't say that with derogatorily. Like they are sort of year in year out one of the best teams in the MAC, and they've got a really good quarterback. But if you just look at the stats, Toledo outgained them in total yards. Toledo had 27 first downs to Illinois' 21. Toledo had 230 yards passing through the air, and they had 186 yards rushing. So it was sort of they won the time of possession 32-27. It wasn't like there was some two big fluke plays or something that Toledo kept used to stay in the game. They outplayed Illinois and probably should have won that game. And then same thing with the Kansas game. Kansas beat them in every way you can beat them. They had 27 first downs to Illinois' 19. They had 539 total yards, which was 277 passing on 21 of 29, and then 262 rushing yards on 44 attempts for 6 yards per rush. They just time and possession, 37 minutes. Kansas, and again, I am on the hype train. It may very well be that Kansas is really, really good offensively. Illinois, not great, but really good offense. But what I see from Illinois is the strength of the unit is the front. They play an odd man front. They play a lot of 3-4. Yeah, they play a lot of 3-4, and then a lot of nickel out of that 3-3. So it ends up being a lot of 3-3-5. And I suspect with Penn State playing a lot of 3 receiver sets, we'll probably see a lot of that sort of 3-3-5. But it's kind of odd the way they utilize these guys. They've got Jerzon Newton. I think he goes by Johnny Newton. He's 6'2", 295 pounds. He's huge, and he's on a lot of mock drafts actually. But they line him up. They kind of line him up at like a D end spot, and then they've got another guy, Keith Randolph, who's a really good player, 6 foot, 305 pounds. He's kind of more of like 6'5". Sorry, he's kind of more of like their like typical run stuffing nose tackle. But the way they line up in this 3-4 front is kind of odd. And if you watch the Kansas game, it wasn't that they got physically pushed around, but in the run game, they just seemed like they were really out schemed, and Kansas was finding massive gaps, and Kansas was doing a lot of good stuff, a lot of movement, and they just were making like difficult for that front. And I think the linebackers at Illinois are probably the weakness. If you watch that Kansas game, Kansas spread them out. Kansas did a lot of like 3 and 4 receiver set and just spread them out. Quick pass rush. They were doing a lot of quick passes and screens to neutralize those guys up front, and the back seven just really got shredded. So it's one of those games where I think it's all about matchups, right? And I think if we played Illinois last year, I would have been really scared because Illinois had a really good defense. They had a couple NFL caliber guys in the secondary, so I think they probably locked down and stopped the run. And then offensively, they had a better offensive line. They had Chase Brown, an NFL running back. They would have been a really tough matchup for Penn State. The way that they are this year, not saying that they won't go on to have a decent season. I think they're built more defensively to go up against like an Iowa or even like as good as Michigan is, maybe more of like the style of Michigan. But if Penn State's able to use Aller and go 3 or 4 wide, use the tight ends up the seam, it just seems like the back half of that Illinois defense is ripe for the taking. If you watch, I encourage anybody who's listening, go back and watch the highlights from the Kansas game, and you will see. I think you'll see what Penn State has the capability to do to Illinois.
And Jordan, before I let you go on to the DBs, because I know you have some thoughts on them, just to wrap up what Zach was saying there, Newton and Randolph, they do kind of scare me and intimidate me just based on what they do. They collectively go by the name The Law Firm, which is kind of cool. Newton was the number one Power 5 interior defensive lineman last year. In all the Power 5, he was the best defensive interior lineman. He was a first team All-American preseason by like everybody, the AP, ESPN, everybody. He can play. He is really good, I think. And then Randolph, I think, is really good too. I just don't think he's quite as good because he's a little bit bigger, so he's not quite as fast. But the way Zach says, go look at Kansas film. While you're at it, go look at Keith Randolph's media guide picture. He looks like a psychopath. He looks like a serial killer, and I'm terrified. So please do that and add that into the comments. He looks terrifying in the media guide.
I love it. I'll have to go take a look at it. Yeah, the only other thing I wanted to hit on, and this may be the best take of the podcast here, but who the hell is going to cover Lambert Smith? Because no offense to Kansas, their receivers didn't look crazy fast. And I just don't think Illinois has the personnel to line up. And I think we're going to see a couple big, maybe touchdowns out of Lambert Smith this weekend. So
Miles Scott is a name to watch in the DB. He had a pick 6 against Toledo, leads the team in tackles. Zach, you probably know better than me. I'm not sure exactly what position he plays. Is he a corner or more of the
he's a free safety? Yeah, he's a free safety, and that was actually the name I was going to mention as well. Is the one guy that from the film that I saw looked like he was making some plays and has some capabilities back there. I feel like corner is really where, again, you're replacing two cornerbacks that went on to the NFL, and not everybody has the luxury that Penn State does, where you lose a Joey Porter Jr. and you have a Kalen King and Johnny Dixon and some of the freshmen. It's just it's hard to replace those guys, and you just can't play defense the way. The other thing worth mentioning, I don't think we've mentioned it yet. Their defensive coordinator the last 2 years, Ryan Walters, is now the head coach at Purdue. So they lost all this talent, and they lost the coordinator, who I don't think people realize. And again, they play in the Big Ten West, so I'm not going to give them too much credit statistically, but I think they only gave up like 13 points a game last year. I mean, they were statistically, not a joke, one of the best defenses in the country. And you saw Illinois, if anybody remembers the Michigan game, Illinois played in Ann Arbor last year and got absolutely hosed on a illegal pick play that wasn't called a pick from Michigan, that Illinois very possibly could have won in Ann Arbor last year. But anyway, just to say, not only do you lose all that talent, you lose the defensive coordinator. I think that's definitely something to, keep in mind as well. But there's just they seem ripe for the taking is where we're at. It's odd because I'm the guy, if anybody's watching who remembers the preseason predictions, I was the guy who was grappling with predicting Penn State to take a loss in this game, because I did not anticipate seeing the type of Illinois team that we're seeing right now. I thought they can run the ball and they can play defense, and it seems like they can't play defense, and the run game hasn't been great, and they actually have a quarterback who's better than I expected, and a passing game that's a little bit better than I expected. So I kind of missed the boat on Illinois, I guess we'll say, in the preseason predictions.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't know what is going on with Jordo, but
I think we're having some technical difficulties here. Yeah. But
I agree. I thought that this was like the prototypical trap game, and Illinois would be like solid, and they have proven to not be super solid. So I don't know, but yeah, the other thing that stood out to me defensively, Zach, what do you think about Clayton Bush? Did you see this kid?
Yeah, he made a play. Trying to think if he was the guy that had either Bush or it might have been one of their corners. Nicholson had an interception in the Kansas game, but I think Bush maybe recovered a fumble. He's a transfer senior.
Yeah, it looks funny because he's the one white guy in the defensive secondary, so it always stands out.
Yeah, he's your classic strong safety, and they have guys that, and I don't mean this in relation to him or anybody in general, but I will say the linebackers. If you pull up that Kansas tape again, they have guys that just seem like they're overmatched, especially at the linebacker position. And whether that means for Penn State thrown across the middle, or maybe it means the tight ends, right? There's going to be mismatches with what you can do with Theo Johnson and Tyler Warren and maybe even Khalil Dinkins. That's something to watch, but there's just guys that seem overmatched out there from a Big Ten standpoint. And really that Kansas game, I mean, 34-23, if you, again, I've said it a million times now, that score does not tell you what happened in that game. Kansas marched the ball up and down on them all game, and Kansas had a few turnovers. That score could have been, if Kansas was played a little bit of a cleaner game, they could have had 42 or 49 in that game easily.
Yeah. Can you hear us, Jordan?
I think we got our fearless leader back.
No, never mind. All right. Anyways, do you have anything else about Illinois? Anything else stand out to you? I got to get this banner off, or this thing off, while he's trying to figure out what's going on. It's driving me crazy.
No, I think we pretty much covered.
I feel like this is our shortest preview ever.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's pretty straightforward. I think Illinois, from what my sense of watching film and listening to Bielema and reading some of their articles, it seems pretty straightforward. I think they're just really struggling defensively. This is the type of game where offensively, if you're Penn State, it seems like you should be able to go in there, and I don't want to overstate it, but kind of be able to do what you want to do. I think if you want to go in there and run the ball, you should be able to run the ball. Kansas was getting big chunk plays. If you want to go in there with Aller, spread them out, and utilize your speed and athleticism against that back seven, you should be able to do that too. So I think it's kind of, I think the West Virginia game was somewhat conservative, and I think we just kind of wanted to see what we have and not get Aller too amped up. And then of course the Delaware game is, you can't read anything into that. This is, for me, this is sort of a show me game for me. Like the first 2 weeks, we're just kind of dipping our toes in the water. I think this is a game where if Penn State's clicking on all cylinders and plays to their capabilities, and if Illinois is who I think they are, this is the type of game where you're number 7 in the country, you show up and you play like it, you go get a very convincing win on the road to start off Big Ten play. And if we see something less than that, I don't want to say that's like red flags, but then that might belie that maybe there's some areas of weakness that we hadn't yet identified that they're going to show up once you start going on the road in the Big Ten. And say what you will about Illinois' weaknesses or any of the teams that Penn State's going to play going forward, other than UMass and maybe Northwestern, it's hard to win on the road. It's hard to win in the Big Ten. I mean, the other teams have players too. So you got to show up, you got to execute, you got to play to your capabilities. Because I think that, again, I know we said we weren't going to mention it, I think Penn State was like a 25-point favorite in 2021. And then you watch that game and Illinois dominated. So there's always going to be games across college football where you have a heavy favorite show up and the game plays out and you're like, how in the world were they favored by 2 or 3 touchdowns? So you still got to show up and you got to play to your strengths, and you got to maximize your capabilities.
Yeah, and Zach, before, I guess, since we're pretty much good with Illinois, and hopefully Jordo, you're back and you can hear us, I do have a question that we don't need to spend a lot of time on. What are your thoughts or your opinion on this whole starting on the road Big Ten play? This is 8 straight years. I mean, I feel like it could be a big deal. I don't really want to make it one, but I feel like it could be a big deal. So, Zach, I'm just curious, like, what are your 8 years in a row where Penn State has started their Big Ten schedule on the road?
Yeah, great question. Franklin talks about it a lot.
He joked about it a lot this week too. Like he seemed to be more like, facetiously joking.
Kind of a joke, kind of passive aggressive. Yeah. But so I think there's 2 things that can be true at the same time. And I think one is, I'm not buying that just like randomly or with the law of averages, we would have a home game in there at some point to start the Big Ten play. At the same time, I don't really care. I don't think it really matters. With the Big Ten playing a 9-game conference schedule now, every other year. So like 1 year you'll have 5 home games and 4 road games. The next year you'll have you'll flip it. So like theoretically, every year when you have 5 away games, like you'd think you probably start with an away game and end with an away game, and because just numerically that's how it's going to work. But you'd think in one of those years where you have 5 home games, you wouldn't start with a road game. But I don't know. I don't get too exercised about it. I think it's actually, the last 2 years are a good example where the last 2 seasons Penn State actually started not just Big Ten play on the road, but week 1 with a Big Ten road game and got really, really nice victories on the road that I think in the case of last year helped springboard them to success. In the case of 2021, helped springboard them to early season success that wasn't sustained. But that win in Wisconsin was a big win. And sure, would you like to start the season at home? But the flip side is you go on the road, you get a huge win, and that's one less road game you got to play the rest of the way. And now you've got your team bought in. You've got a group of guys that know how to take sort of a business-like approach, go on the road, get your job done, go home. And so I know he doesn't like it. He brings that up all the time, and he politics to Pat Kraft to try to get something done on that front. I just don't really care.
Here's a hot take. I'd rather start on the road personally. Like you said, you get those big wins early, and then you don't have to play a road game late. So,
yeah, I mean, if it was like at Ohio State or at Michigan, I might feel differently. But I also just think I'm not saying that there's somebody in the Big Ten HQ sitting around like scheming up a way to screw Penn State, but it seems really unlikely that like they're just hitting like a random schedule generator every year and it just keeps coming up road game to start. But
yeah, some people get really upset about it.
It gives something for the capital J journos to write about, but it doesn't bother me too much.
I was just curious.
All right. You guys have anything else for Illinois? Apologies
score
for
prediction.
Oh yeah, score predictions. Good call. I'll just go first because I have mine up. I don't think it will be too crazy, but I'm going to go 42-14.
It's a good one. I'm going to go Penn State. We're averaging over 50, right? There's only like 7 teams that are doing that. So let's go 49-13. 49-13. A little higher than yours.
So I'm gonna go 38-17. So kind of close. I think Penn State will pretty much be solidly in control of the game. I think, and maybe I'm just being a Debbie Downer. I'm not 100% sold on our defense yet. I'd really love to see a game. The Delaware game doesn't matter, and I don't think they played poorly against West Virginia, but I think the scrambling ability of Altmaier. I mean, we saw that with Garrett Green. I think there's a chance that Illinois is going to be able to string together some decent offensive play, a series, and score some points. So we'll say 38-17.
Yeah.
So still covering. I mean, I think the spread now is like 14.5. The last I saw it.
Yeah. Yeah, you're just being way too nitpicky there, Zach. You're gonna lose us more subscribers. So.
Oh man, it's great.
But that's all I got.
Remember when we used to joke about our 50 subscribers, and now we get to joke about we lost one. Who cares?
Maybe 10 years from now when we have 10,000 subscribers. Maybe not even 10 years from now.
Hey, like I said last week, we'll take him back. I'd be glad to have him back. He's welcome here.
Come on the podcast. Actually,
we'll actually welcome him to. Yeah, I would say let him come on, and he can analyze Drew Aller.
Yeah, he can be our Drew Aller expert, like I was Clifford expert. So for those of you who can't see, I have a Clifford NFL quarterback Clifford jersey. So just want to remind you, I was right on him.
Okay.
Just had to get that out there. All right. Let's go to the pick'ems for this week. So got a kind of crappy week for pick'ems.
I think it's a really bad slate of games.
Yeah,
that's my take.
I think it's worse than last week.
I think it's maybe even worse than week 1, which was not great. But like I said to you guys in the text, next week is a really good slate of games. Mm-hmm. So we'll get there.
Well,
I don't even remember.
Chugging along. All right, I'll throw it up here, Devin, so you can see.
Oh, thanks. I was trying to scroll back through like 10,000 text messages to figure it out.
That was me building this graphic today.
Yeah, that's what I had to do last week. So thanks for not being here.
I'm sorry. I took a vacation for the first time.
It's all right. I forgive you.
Forever.
Oh, it wasn't a vacation when you were overseas? I'm just kidding.
Hey.
Taxpayer funded vacation.
Yeah. This was out of pocket vacation. All
Gotcha.
right, moving on. We have our week 3 pick'ems. Starting off, number 14 LSU at Mississippi State. Across the board, we got LSU. I think LSU is gonna score a lot of points this week and try to just build off last week's win and kind of get over that loss to Florida State early. You guys have any thoughts on LSU Mississippi State?
I think this one has the potential to be close. I'm a coward, so I couldn't get myself to pick Mississippi State. Mississippi State has enough offense. I think they've got a pretty good quarterback. I suspect that you're right that defensively they're not going to be able to slow LSU down, but I think it has a chance to be a good game. Mississippi State, when I looked at this one, just going back over the last few years, they've historically played LSU pretty tough in Starkville, so we'll see.
I think it's a really good week to see how good Florida State is. I think LSU should win this game pretty handily, but if it's really tight, then that makes me a little bit worrisome that maybe LSU is just not that good, and then maybe Florida State isn't as good as they seem to be. So that's really what will be my takeaway from this game. I think LSU should handle them, but like Zach said, weird things happen when you're in Starksville. So
it's all those cowbells.
Yeah, and what was I going to say? What's their mascot? Well, I'm completely drawing a blank.
Aren't they Bulldogs?
They're
the Bulldogs, yeah. When you're in Bulldog country, things happen. That was a brain stoppage there.
As a former Bulldog coach,
my brain just completely stopped. That was weird.
You Mitch McConnell that one.
Yeah.
All right, moving.
Anyway, what's next?
K-State at Missouri. All three took K-State. I don't think
K-State by a million.
Yeah, Missouri's not good.
K-State, I did not get the line on this one. I think the last I saw it was down to like 4.5 or 5.5.
Outrageous.
Obviously, it's on the road, but I expect K-State to win. Maybe not a blowout, but fairly comfortably.
They're just still trying to prop up Georgia from last year when they almost lost.
From last year.
All right, moving on. Man, we're real creative here. Minnesota at UNC. All three of us took UNC.
Yep.
I think UNC bounces back. They definitely dropped, as you'll see in my top 25 later. Didn't look great against Appalachian State, but it's Appalachian State, so. But I think they take care of business.
So even though, I agree that score was obviously closer, and I think their concerns were defensively. UNC's offense still looked really good to me. They ran the ball really effectively. May was still pretty effective as a quarterback. It was weird conditions too. I'm going to try not to read too much into that, but I agree. I think UNC bounces back and takes care of Minnesota. Minnesota has kind of showed that they can be up and down. I just going into UNC, which, I mean, Zach and I talked on the Delaware podcast. Like, I think it's cool that Minnesota is going to play at UNC. I think it's great. 2 Power 5 teams playing each other, even if they're not like top high-end Power 5 teams. They're playing each other, and I love it. I just don't think Minnesota is good enough.
Yeah, I think they just don't have enough offense. I think they can go down there and compete. We talked, I think maybe it was the preseason predictions. I was pretty high on PJ Fleck. I feel like he has been doing pretty consistent work with a Minnesota program that doesn't get high-level recruits. I just think, that Nebraska game scared me a little bit because they really did not do anything offensively until the very end. And I don't see them having enough offense to keep up with Drake May.
Yeah, I agree. I think you jinxed PJ Fleck, so should probably apologize to him. Moving on. Vodtech at Rutgers. All three of us, once again, took Rutgers. I don't know. I haven't seen a lot out of Vodtech. And, I can't think of his name. Who's their coach?
Brent Pry.
Brent Pry, yeah. I think he has his hands full there. I kind of was hoping they would be better under him, but I think recruiting hasn't been going his way per se. And I don't know. That's all I got on Vodtech, really.
There's there's a really interesting article on ESPN.com that went up like a week ago that did a really in-depth dive on Vatek, and I would suggest anybody that's interested check it out, because that's for people our age, like when we were kids growing up, like Vatek was a power. And it's probably like, if you're a young kid right now, like a teenager or something, it's probably like Virginia Tech, like they were a power, and there's a lot of reasons why that fell off, and the recruiting drying up, Frank Beamer leaving, and then there's just check that article out. It's very interesting. I think Brent Pry has from between facilities and just sort of alignment with the university, there's a lot going on behind the scenes there. For me, I just think Rutgers, Greg Schiano has finally gotten them to the level where they're fairly consistent and competent defensively. They've got a bit of a running game. The quarterback Wimsatt, I think, has improved from last year. They're going to obviously hit the roadblocks that they always hit in the Big Ten, but I think they're at home, and I just trust them a little bit more defensively and run game wise.
I agree.
All right. Finally, we have a change up here. Number 11, Tennessee at Florida. So Devin and I, we took Tennessee. I think Tennessee is a solid team, and I know technically I think this is a rivalry game, or if I'm not mistaken. But
Yep.
I think they go down to the swamp and take care of business. This isn't your daddy's Florida team, so they just haven't looked that great, to be honest. But that's my take. I know, Zach, you wanted to be different and take.
Florida, I just somebody's got to mix it up at some point. But I will say this: I don't know that most of Tennessee's roster was not alive the last time that Tennessee won in Florida, and they play every other year in Gainesville. There's been a lot of, basically since Urban Meyer, Florida's been somewhat, they've had some years where they've been solid, but they've been mostly down. So Jim McElwain, Will Muschamp, Dan Mullen, they've managed to beat Tennessee at home. There's just something. Tennessee does not win in Gainesville, and I think as much as we ragged on Florida early, there's no shame in that loss to Utah. I think they did not play well, but they didn't get their doors blown off. I think they're going to show up. They're going to buck up at home, and I feel like there's got to be an upset too somewhere, because really this year, it's only 2 weeks, but we really haven't had. We've had Texas over Bama, we've had Florida State over LSU, but those were all games with teams ranked inside the top 15. We really haven't had anybody from the outside knock off one of the higher ranked teams yet, and I'm going with Florida.
All right. Now we got next up Syracuse at Purdue. I'm going with the Boilermakers. I really didn't look too much into this game. I don't know. I hate Syracuse for some reason. I don't have a justification for it. I just hate them. And maybe it's because they play in that stupid Carrier Dome. I don't know. That's what I went with.
Yeah, I went with Syracuse because last week I picked Western Michigan as my super dog, and then Syracuse beat them by 40 something, and the spread was only 20. So I went with Syracuse. They made me look stupid last week. Hopefully they don't make me look stupid 2 weeks in a row.
Yeah, and will. on that note, I feel like Purdue is a team that always makes me look stupid. And just when I think we always talk about it in the context of like Purdue loses the games they should win, and then like they'll beat Ohio State at home, like they did a few years ago, or they beat Iowa. I know nobody wants to talk about 2021, but Purdue beat Iowa the year that Iowa beat us, and so I don't know. I feel like this is a game Purdue should win. Purdue actually went on the road last week and won at Virginia Tech. A bit of a bounce back after an opening a week 1 loss at home to Fresno. Just seems like a game that Purdue should win, which tells me they're not going to.
Well, Syracuse is favored, so there's that. If you buy into that,
but I think they were like a 2 or 3 point favorite.
Yeah,
2.5.
For me, it's basically like a toss up game, and Purdue's at home, so. But
yeah. All right, and then last we got Pitt versus West Virginia. I broke my cardinal rule, and I'm going with Pitt. I don't think West Virginia is really good, and I don't think Pitt's that good. I think it's 1 point favorite for Pitt, but I decided to go with Pitt.
Pitt looked awful last week. So I was at the Delaware game, so I didn't get home and watch nearly as much college football as normal. But I did watch like almost the last full quarter of that Pitt game. Holy cow, they looked awful. They rushed for like 80 yards as a team. The quarterback completed 10 of 32. What's his name? Jerkovich completed 10 of 32 passes. The only thing he did good was he threw 3 touchdown passes. 10 of 32 for
You stole my
170 yards.
stat line. I was going to bring that up. That's
Yeah.
that's like the craziest
Terrible.
QB stat line I've ever seen. And even in the game, like when Rutgers plays Ohio State or Penn State, or like 10 of 32, you just do not see that. But he managed to actually get some
3
yards and touchdowns out of it. So, but they didn't run the ball. They couldn't throw the ball, and maybe Cincinnati's better than expected. But
Hey, 3 out of his 10 completions were touchdowns. So
it's a high percentage, but I
just felt like, and maybe because we saw West Virginia and haven't really looked critically at Pittsburgh, I just feel like we know there's some things that West Virginia can do, and I just think that the running quarterback, the run game, and the secondary at West Virginia is obviously the weakness. We talked about that a lot in week 1. And based on those passing stats from Pittsburgh, they don't seem like a team that perhaps can really exploit that.
I just want Pitt to start Christian Vayu or Vayar, however they decided last year to pronounce his name. Why not? You have I think Jerkovich is a 5th-year senior, isn't he? Hasn't he started? He's like the Sean Clifford of Pitt, except for he's even worse.
He's a local kid. I think he went to Pine Richland and was a pretty heavily recruited out of the Whippeal, and he started at Notre Dame and
he sucks.
Got beat out, and then he went to Boston College and left there. So it's kind of interesting. But
start Vayu.
I'm going West Virginia, and I think it's a pure toss-up game, and they're at home. That's really my reasoning.
It's cool that the backyard brawl is back, though. Did they play last year? I forget.
Yeah, they played.
Last year, the first year they brought it back.
It was a very good game. It was the same. It was Thursday night, the same night as Purdue at Penn State, and it was a very good game. And Pitt won in a close one in the waning moments.
Okay. I'll just never forget when West Virginia was going to go to the national it was West Virginia was going to go to the national championship, and Pitt beat them in the backyard brawl, the last game of the year. That was hilarious.
Yeah, because Pat McAfee missed a field goal.
Yeah.
2007, the greatest year in the history of college football.
The most insane year ever.
All right.
Super Dogs, while we're here.
Yeah, Super Dogs. I don't even remember who I picked.
So I'll go first. I kind of teed this one up a little bit in the pick'ems, but Mississippi State is. I think it was initially they were getting 10 points. I think it's down to like 9.5. I didn't pick them to win because I'm a coward, but I think they have a chance to win this. But I do think it's going to be a relatively tight game, or they at least get a chance to backdoor cover. So I'm going Mississippi State.
And as the only person with any Superdog pick points this year, I did not do good last week, as I mentioned. Broke my streak there. I'm taking Charlotte at home against Georgia State. Charlotte is getting 8.5 points against Georgia State. I actually thought Charlotte looked okay against Maryland, especially for the first quarter or so. I mean, Charlotte was up 14-0, and then Maryland came back and found a way to really crush them in the end and looked pretty good doing so. But for Charlotte to be at home and getting 8.5 against Georgia State of all people, I feel like Charlotte might find a way. Do you need me to keep stalling, Jordan, until you remember who you picked?
I remembered. I'm taking BYU at Arkansas. 8.5 points. I don't know. It just seemed like a good game to pick.
Yeah, I'm with you.
That's all I got for pick'ems.
I agree.
All right. Who wants to start off top 25?
Zach usually talks the most, so do you want him to go so that you and I don't have to talk as much?
Yeah, sure.
He'll cover everybody, and then we can just run through ours.
All right.
It's usually how it works.
I'll throw it up there, Zach.
Now I'm just going to breeze through it so you guys
All right.
So starting at 25, the common theme you're going to see here is a lot of Pac-12 teams. I'm high on the Pac-12. I've got UCLA at 25. They haven't really been challenged yet. I really like the freshman quarterback Dante Moore. Another common theme in the Pac-12 is I think that league has the best quarterback play. Number 24, Washington State. I don't know if either of you happen to watch any of that Wisconsin game. Cam Ward really good quarterback for Washington State. They looked good. I think they're a good, solid, competent team. It's going to be an interesting race this year in the Pac-2 between Washington State and Oregon State, who are both ranked in my top 25. So I have them at 24. 23, I've got Iowa. I think they're just kind of going to hang around the back end of my top 25 by virtue of their defense. They had a really ugly win against Iowa State. They got another defensive touchdown. Brian Ferentz is behind on his contractually required 25 points per game, and that even counts the defensive scores that they get. So that will be, if nothing else, in the Big Ten West, that will be fun to watch this season to see how short he comes up on the 25 points per game, which I think is kind of a ridiculous thing to do, honestly. Like, either you're satisfied with your offense and there's way more ways to qualify that, or even even if you want to use quantitative metrics like yards per play or whatever, just points per game just seems kind of arbitrary, especially when you play the style of play that they play offensively, which is to just try to slow it down and run the ball and burn clock. But anyway,
and with the new clock rule, I feel like that's unfair to him.
That's true. Yeah. So Iowa at 23
should be 22.5 points.
I've got Duke at 22. Obviously that huge Clemson win. Again, I don't think any of us are high on Clemson, but that was still a big win. Colorado at 21. I maybe ought to even have them higher, because say what you will about Nebraska, and I don't think any of us are super high on Tennessee, or on TCU rather. They've got 2 Power 5 wins in the first 2 games, one of which was on the road. It's pretty legit, no matter how you slice it. I've got Miami at 20. They didn't just beat Texas A&M. They really throttled them. They looked really good offensively. Tyler Van Dyke, I think, was a guy last year that everybody expected to break out at quarterback and just did not have a good year. Mario Cristobal is kind of in only year 2 for him, but I think you know how these fan bases can get. So that was a huge win for Miami. I've got them at 20. 19, UNC. We talked about them a little bit earlier. They kind of struggled with App State. I didn't punish them too much for that. I dropped Bama all the way down to 18. They're probably better than some of the teams ahead of them, but they didn't look good. They did, this wasn't your classic, hey, Bama loses at home every once in a while and the other team just gets some like fluke plays, or Bama turns the ball over a million times and stuff that never would happen just happened to happen that night. They got beat. Texas beat them. Texas was better than them. They got beat. They committed a lot of penalties. I don't want to be one of these like overreactors and just say, the dynasty's dead and Nick Saban's horrible. And, but they have some flaws. They definitely have some flaws. So I've got LSU at 17, kind of the same thing. They've got a chance to battle back after that Florida State loss, starting this week actually with a SEC road game against a live opponent. They could probably move up with a win this week. I've got Ole Miss at 16. I've got them ahead of their fellow SEC West compatriots there because they went on the road and beat Tulane last week, and that's not going to set off a lot of fireworks for most people, but that's a good, solid Tulane team that beat USC last year in the Cotton Bowl. And for whatever reason, Ole Miss went on the road and played Tulane at their place, so that's a good win. I think it's a good win for Ole Miss. I've got Oklahoma at 15. Similar to the Tulane thing, I think they got a win over SMU that nobody's going to give them credit for, but that's a decent win. SMU, I think, is probably better than some of the teams in the back end of the Big 12. So I have them at 15. K-State at 14. We haven't really seen them play anybody yet. We'll find out a little bit more when they go on the road to Mizzou this week. Oregon State at 13, as we've all, I think, been talking about this year so far. I love Oregon State. 12, I have Tennessee. Going to find out about Tennessee again. They go on the road to Florida. I think we'll learn. We're going to learn about who Tennessee is this week. I've got USC at 11. This is probably one of the areas where our top 25s differentiate themselves. I think you guys are maybe a little higher, or at least Devin might be a little bit higher on USC than I am. I don't know. I'm just jaded by all the years of Lincoln Riley teams that can't play defense, and so I need to see it. I'm going to need to see it against the Oregons and the Washingtons and Utah, and before I totally buy into the hype. I've got Ohio State all the way down at 10. They actually announced Kyle McCord is locked in as the starting quarterback this week, going forward, I should say, for the rest of the year. I don't know. They have not looked good. They beat, as much as I railed against Penn State for playing Delaware, 63-7. and the way that Penn State dominated is a much different story than that Ohio State win over Youngstown, another FCS team. That was 35-7. I mean,
Yep.
if you'd have told me before the season Ohio State will beat an FCS team 35-7, I'd have said, "Holy cow, something must be wrong." And I haven't ventured over to any of their blogs, but I imagine their fan base must be going nuts right now, which is awesome. So,
they are.
and I've got, speaking of Ohio State and their fan base, I've got Notre Dame at 9. That's going to be a massive game next week. I think that's going to tell us a lot about both of those teams, and that's going to have a massive impact on the college football playoff situation as well. I think Notre Dame's looked really good. I fancy myself a Notre Dame hater, but I think they've really played themselves through the first couple weeks into the top 10, and we're gonna find out who they are with that Ohio State game. I've got Oregon at 8. A nice solid road win at Texas Tech. Some of the shine comes off that win because Texas Tech lost in week 1 to Wyoming in sort of a weird game, but I think Texas Tech is a solid team. Oregon goes on the road in week 2. You got to give them some credit for that. Bo Nix played pretty well. They were in a dogfight, and they could have easily lost that game, but they pulled it out at the end. So top 7. Okay, so that's the start of 3 straight Pac-12 teams. I've got Washington at 7. Michael Penix is really good. They've got 2 really good receivers. They're legit. Going to find out a little bit more about them. They go on the road to Michigan State this week. I think with everything that's going on in Michigan State, I think they take care of business, but we'll learn a little bit more about them at that point. I've got Utah at 6, probably higher than either of you have them. But again, I think the win against Florida, well, I'm predicting Florida to beat Tennessee this week. So I think that win is going to look a lot nicer for them. But I just love, out of all those Pac-12 teams, I think if they can get Cam Rising back, that's maybe a big if because he hasn't played in the first 2 weeks. But if they can get him back and they get a little bit more explosive on offense, they have the defense. They definitely have the defense, especially in that league. So I have them at 6, probably a little too high, but I'm a big Utah fan. I've got Penn State at 5. I've got Michigan at 4. Probably could go either way on that. I don't think Michigan's really shown a lot. They haven't played anybody. Penn State kind of hasn't either, but West Virginia is better than either of the teams that Michigan played. So then moving into the final 3, I've got Georgia at 3. I've got Florida State at 2. And I've got Texas at number 1 because, as I talked about with Bama, you go on the road, you win in Tuscaloosa, and you win in a way that was not some sort of fluke. At this point in the season, Howard, I'd like to see your guys' top 25 because I'm interested to see where you have them. But I don't understand how you could not have Texas number 1. And I know Georgia's good. I know Georgia's a back-to-back national champion. But unless your rankings are just based on what you think will happen at the end of the year, I mean, look, this podcast is as much of a horns down podcast as I think you'll find. But they went into Bama and they won, and it wasn't a fluke. They were the better team. They looked really good. Quinn Ewers looked really good. They looked like they're going to be the real deal.
All
so that's
right.
my top 25. And I tried to talk for you, Devin, so you don't have to say a whole lot.
Great. Thank you so much. So my 3 new teams for this week, I had Wisconsin, Tulane, and A&M fall out. So at 25, I have Wyoming. Definitely the only one on this podcast that put Wyoming in the top 25. However, oh, wait, did you, Jordan? I don't know. I haven't seen your top 25 yet.
No, I didn't.
Okay. So, but you made that face. So the reason for that is 2 parts. They've played the exact same 2 teams that Oregon has played. I have Oregon at number 11. Wyoming beat Texas Tech by almost the exact same score. And now they didn't beat Portland State by 80 points the way Oregon did. Hence why Oregon is much higher and Wyoming is lower. Wyoming has a really big game this week. They're at Texas. Texas should win by 25 to 30 points, but Wyoming, I think, is kind of sneaky. I'm not sure that they're probably the best team in the Mountain West or whatever it is out there, but I don't know. I watched a lot of that Wyoming Texas Tech game 2 weeks ago, and I was pretty impressed with how they do things. So I rewarded them because they're going to fall out.
If they keep it up, they might get an invite into the Pac-2.
Yeah, seriously. But I mean, I know they're going to lose to Texas, so I figured why not just put them at 25 this week. And I don't like. There's nobody that I don't have that I'm like, man, I really should have put them in. So I just went with Maryland or with Wyoming. And then at 24, I put Maryland. Talked about them a little bit. They looked really bad for like 8 minutes against Charlotte, and then the rest of the game they really dominated. So I also kind of wanted to boost up the Big Ten, as Zach pointed out whenever we talked about these. Iowa fell a couple spots down to 23. UCLA I added here at 22. Duke moved up a little bit to 21. They played nobody, but at least they beat Clemson in week 1. And I just, man, Clemson has quickly risen into like almost a Bama and Notre Dame territory, as much as I like hate them, because they just think they're so good. So Clemson's going to have to shock me if they're going to ever get back in my top 25. Like they might have to win out, because I don't know.
Tune in next week. They have Florida State at home.
Yeah, they're not getting in. They're not going to beat Florida State. So then at 20, I have Colorado. I kind of agree with Zach. Like theoretically, they probably could be higher. I still think their ceiling is 7 wins, so I don't think it really matters like where they're ranked right now. Playing in the Pac-12 with how good the Pac-12 is this year, Colorado's they're not good. They're just not good enough. I mean, they're a cool story. I mentioned it last week, and Jordo, I don't know if you went back and listened to it. Like, I love that Deion Sanders is doing what he's doing. Like, I'm totally cool with it. Some people might not like it. I think it's great, but they're gonna probably go 7-5, make a bowl game. People will sit out, and they'll go 7-6. So
You
they're
heard
at
it
20
here first.
What?
You heard it here first. 7-6, Colorado.
We'll see. 19, I have UNC, dropped them a couple spots just because of the App State game. I moved Oklahoma all the way up to 18. The fact that they held SMU to 10 points or 11 points, whatever it ended up being, I think Oklahoma might have a little bit of a defense. And obviously SMU is not great, but I think Oklahoma's – I think I was sleeping on Oklahoma a little bit. So I moved them up to 18. I have Ole Miss at 17. The win at Tulane is cool, but I don't know. I feel like Tulane's probably not quite as good as they were last year. But to win there, that's cool. 16, I have LSU. They beat some nobody. I don't even remember who they played, but they crushed them, I think. 15, Kansas State, who has, like Zach said, played nobody. 14, Alabama. So not quite as low as Zach, but they have one win over Middle Tennessee State College, University of Tennessee, of all the other letters in their acronym. And then they lose to Texas. So why would I put them ahead of over half of these teams? I think they're at 14. Oregon State at 13, Tennessee at 12, Oregon at 11. Utah, definitely not as high on Utah as Zach is, but I think that could change when Cam Rising is back. I don't think they looked good against Florida. And then the fact that they did not blow out Baylor, who just lost to Texas State, I feel like they should have beat them by like 40 the way Baylor looked against Texas State. But, I mean, they're still 10. I think they're still really good. I think they're going to fight for the Pac-2 title. But I just don't think they're quite as good as Zach wants them to be. But we'll see. When Cam Rising comes back, I think their offense will change a lot. And that's probably what Utah fans are hoping for. Washington at 9. I still feel like we don't really know enough about them, but we will soon. Ohio State at 8. I'm with Zach. I think they've not impressed me at all. I was really close to dropping them out of my top 10. I think that they'll get it figured out. I really do. And they'll be, after next week when they lose to Notre Dame, they're going to drop pretty far, because I have Notre Dame at 7. I have them going to the college football playoff. I told you I was going to pick them. When we have that on our pick'ems next week, you already know I'm picking Notre Dame. I hate Notre Dame. I want that to be very clear. I hate Notre Dame. But I picked them to go to the college football playoff. I think they've looked really impressive. I know they haven't really played anybody, but that NC State win at NC State, the way that they controlled that game, I think is impressive. And Sam Hartman was definitely the missing piece there. USC at 6, definitely higher than Zach. I don't know. I feel like if you have Lincoln Riley and the defending Heisman champion, and you haven't lost yet, I feel like you have to be somewhere near the college football playoff. So I don't think they're like unbelievable. And yes, they need to show me more defense, but they also are 3-0 compared to most of the 2-0 teams because they played in week 0. So, I mean, as bad as that sounds, might give you a little boost there just to be 3-0. Then I have Penn State at 5. They're good. They're really good. Let's hope that they can keep winning. Florida State at 4. The win over LSU still holding them up. Michigan at 3 hasn't looked good, but I think they're good. I think they're really good, but they haven't looked really good. And then I moved Georgia down to 2 because I moved Texas up to number 1. Just like Zach said, there is nobody in college football right now with a better win than Texas. For them to go on the road to Tuscaloosa and to beat them, that's incredibly impressive. And like Zach said, it wasn't a fluke. It wasn't Bama was just doing crazy things. No, Texas was the better team, without a doubt. Texas played better. Now, will Texas be better in 12 weeks? I don't know. But they were better in week 2, without a doubt. So Texas at number 1.
Yeah. And I think if Texas had Quinn Ewers all of last year,
they probably would have won that game.
Yeah. All right. I'm going to breeze through mine here for time's sake. So 25, I got Iowa still hanging around there. I added Washington State at 24. 23, I got the U. 23. 22, I dropped UNC from 16 to 22 because they just did not look good last week. Ole Miss up to 21. You guys pretty much hit on everything with Ole Miss. I got 20 Colorado, and I like Colorado, to be honest. I like the story. I like everything about Deion Sanders getting into it with Matt Rule. Like, that's what I'm here for. So to all the commenters out there, big Colorado fan, but just, I don't know. Nebraska sucks, in my opinion. So that's why I got them at 20. 19, moved up UCLA. Then we got Duke up there because they beat Clemson. I got back-to-back 17 LSU, 16 Alabama. The only 2 one-loss teams in my top 25. Like you said, Alabama did not look good. LSU really didn't look good in their loss either. That's just where I have them. Moving on, I got the Sooners up to 15. 14, I got Kansas State. Looking forward to seeing them play this week. 13, I got Oregon. And then 12, I have USC. And the reason I have USC back at 12 is I feel like their defense is just a liability. And I think it's going to come back to bite them. And on the flip side, you'll see I have Oregon State up at 8, and I just think they're the best team in the Pac-12. So, but I have Tennessee at 11, and then 10 Ohio State. They've looked not great, to be honest, and I just think they're digressing. And like I said at the beginning of the year, Ryan Day's going to get fired, so I'm sticking to it. 9, I got Utah. They haven't looked super great. They didn't look great last week, but like you guys said, if Cam Rising comes back, I think they might win the Pac-12 if they can get past Oregon State. And then I have Oregon State at 8. I think they're going to be the best team in the Pac-12 in my opinion, but I've always liked Oregon State. Used to build dynasties with them on NCAA 14, so they got a soft spot in my heart. 7, I got Notre Dame. I think Notre Dame, they've looked good. So, and I'm not a Notre Dame homer or really care for them. Their fan base is annoying, but they've looked good and they very well may make the playoff this year. 6, I got Washington. I think Washington's been quietly just taking care of business. Michael Penix still haunts my dreams with that non-touchdown he scored. So moving on, top 5, probably the wildest top 5 out of any of us. I got Georgia at 5. Georgia didn't score a touchdown in the first quarter last week. And all the Georgia homers, feel free to try and roast me in the comments, but you didn't score against a MAC team in the first quarter. Like, that's an issue. And you can say, well, we started this many freshmen. We had people in. Doesn't matter. You're claiming you're going on a three-peat. You got to score in the first quarter. That's all I'm saying. So you're down to 5. Don't at me. 4, I got Michigan. I think Michigan, they have the talent, but they have not looked as good as Penn State has. So that's why I have Penn State ahead of them at 3. I do honestly think we could be easily one of the best teams in the country. And that's why I put them at 3. We'll see this week, get a big road win, just keep stacking wins. I think we're the team to beat in the Big Ten, personally. And then 2, I have Florida State with their big win over LSU. They've looked good. I believe they play who they play next week. You guys said Clemson, right?
Florida State's at Clemson next week.
At Clemson, yeah. So I think they go in there and blow the doors off Clemson. So look to see them stay at 2, pending Texas doesn't lose this week. And then number 1, we got horns up, horns down. We got Texas at number 1. I mean, they, like you guys said, took care of business, beat Alabama, just outright beat them in every way. And I think at the beginning of the year, I said Quinn Ewers was my Heisman pick. So
You did say that. I will vouch for you. You did say that on this podcast.
So I think Texas, they look good. And I wasn't expecting them to be this good this year, but they're taking care of business. So the sarcasm rolling, as long as he's off the booze, I think Texas stays up. So.
As long as he doesn't fall off the wagon there, yeah.
I mean, to be fair, if I took over USC, I'd probably be drinking a lot too. But that's my top 25. You guys got anything else for today's podcast, or any thoughts on my top 25?
Yeah, it's
Crickets.
Fine. It's fine. Literally.
All right. I think that's all I got, unless you guys got anything else.
I'm good. We got one more bye week basically here this week of crappy football games, and then week 4 things start really ramping up. So I'm excited.
Yeah. And if you guys are into live stream watch alongs, I'm going to do a watch along for the Illinois game. We're going to try it out. Hopefully I don't have any technical difficulties like today. So we'll see, but feel free to hop on there at any point, shoot a comment over. I'll read it on the live stream and get some fan interaction. I'm looking forward to it. So hopefully we take care of business and it's all positive and I don't have to clip any explicit content out if it's going bad. So,
yep.
But that's all I got for this week. Any final thoughts, guys?
Go State.
All right, go State. Nittany No Huddle Nation. We are headed out.
Thanks for watching the Nittany No Huddle podcast.
Check us out on Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook.
Podcasts are posted weekly on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Make sure to like and subscribe so you never miss one of our new shows.